If you have family members waiting to join you in the United States, if you are currently sponsoring a loved one through the immigration process, or if you are someone who has been waiting years, perhaps even decades, to reunite with parents, siblings, or children, then what I am about to share with you today demands your complete and undivided attention. There has been a major announcement regarding immigration policy changes scheduled to take effect in March 2026, and the headlines spreading across the internet right now are causing panic among millions of immigrant families who fear that everything they have worked for, waited for, and sacrificed for could be ripped away from them. I have seen the messages flooding social media. I have read the comments filled with terror and confusion. I have heard from people who cannot sleep at night because they are convinced that their families will be torn apart by these new policies. And I want you to know right now, before we go any further, that I understand that fear. I feel the weight of what you are carrying. The thought of being permanently separated from the people you love most in this world is not just a policy discussion. It is a nightmare that haunts every immigrant who has ever been forced to leave loved ones behind. That emotional response you are experiencing right now is completely valid. It is completely human. When your family's future hangs in the balance, when years of patience and paperwork and prayer suddenly seem threatened, your heart does not wait for facts before it starts racing. Fear arrives first. Fear always arrives first. And I am not here to tell you that your fear is irrational or that you should simply calm down and stop worrying. What I am here to do is give you something more powerful than fear. I am here to give you clarity. My name is Sophia, and I am the voice behind ClearPath USA Daily. This channel exists because I believe that immigrant families deserve better than confusion. You deserve better than headlines designed to terrify you into clicking. You deserve accurate, clear, and compassionate information delivered by someone who genuinely cares about your well-being and your future. I am not an immigration attorney. I am not a government spokesperson. What I am is someone who has dedicated myself to understanding these policies and translating them into language that real people can understand and act upon. So let us take a breath together. Let us step back from the panic and the sensationalism, and let us examine what this immigration overhaul actually contains, who it truly affects, and what it realistically means for families like yours. Because I can tell you right now that the reality is far more nuanced than any clickbait headline could possibly convey. Yes, there are significant changes coming. Yes, some of those changes will require your attention and possibly your action. But no, this is not a situation where families are going to be randomly torn apart without warning or recourse. That is simply not what these policies are designed to do. Before we dive into the specifics, I want to provide some context about why immigration policy feels so unstable right now and why so many families are living in a constant state of anxiety. The United States immigration system is one of the most complex legal frameworks in the world. It has been built and rebuilt over more than a century through countless laws, regulations, executive orders, and court decisions. Different administrations have different priorities. Different political climates produce different enforcement approaches. And caught in the middle of all this complexity are real human beings whose lives depend on decisions made by people they will never meet. If you have been navigating this system for any length of time, you already know how frustrating it can be. You know the endless forms, the confusing instructions, the fees that keep increasing, the wait times that stretch into years, and the constant uncertainty about whether the rules might change before your case is decided. You know what it feels like to check your mailbox every day hoping for good news while dreading bad news. You know the particular agony of being separated from people you love by invisible lines on a map and bureaucratic processes that seem designed to test your patience and your faith. This new announcement has touched a nerve precisely because so many families are already stretched to their emotional limits. When you have been waiting 7 years to bring your mother to America, or 12 years to reunite with your brother, or longer than you want to admit to finally hold your child again, any suggestion that the rules might change feels like a direct threat to everything you have endured. And that is why I take my responsibility so seriously today. I am not going to add to your fear unnecessarily, but I am also not going to pretend that nothing is changing or that you have nothing to think about. What I am going to do is give you the truth, the whole truth, presented in a way that empowers you rather than paralyzes you. Over the next several minutes, I am going to walk you through the major components of this immigration overhaul. I am going to explain what is actually changing, when those changes take effect, and who is most likely to be affected. I am going to separate the genuine concerns from the exaggerated fears, and I am going to give you concrete guidance on what steps you should consider taking to protect yourself and your family. By the end of this video, you will have the information you need to face the months ahead with confidence rather than dread. Stay with me through this entire video. Do not skip ahead. Do not click away. Every piece of information I am about to share builds upon what came before, and missing even one section could leave you with an incomplete picture that leads to unnecessary worry or, worse, inadequate preparation. Now let us get into the substance of what this immigration overhaul actually contains. I am going to break this down into the major categories of changes so you can quickly identify which ones apply to your specific situation. Remember, not every change affects every family. Understanding which provisions are relevant to you is the first step toward responding appropriately. The first major component involves processing timeline adjustments for family-based immigration petitions. Under the new framework taking effect in March 2026, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services will implement revised procedures for how family sponsorship cases are prioritized and processed. This includes changes to how visa bulletin dates are calculated and how cases move through the queue. For some categories, this could mean faster processing. For others, particularly those in heavily backlogged categories, there may be additional waiting periods as the system transitions to new procedures. The important thing to understand is that this is not about eliminating family immigration. This is about restructuring how the existing system operates. If you currently have a pending petition, your place in line is not being erased. However, you may need to pay attention to updated guidance about documentation requirements and response deadlines during the transition period. The second major component addresses what officials are calling enhanced verification protocols. Starting in March 2026, family-based immigration applications will be subject to more rigorous background checks and relationship verification procedures. This means that proving your family relationship will require more comprehensive documentation than in the past. If you are sponsoring a spouse, you should expect additional requests for evidence of your genuine marital relationship. If you are sponsoring parents or siblings, you may need to provide more extensive birth certificates, family records, and supporting documentation. This change is being implemented to address concerns about fraudulent applications, and while it may add steps to the process, it is not designed to prevent legitimate families from reuniting. The key is to begin gathering your documentation now, rather than waiting until you receive a request you are not prepared to answer. The third component involves financial sponsorship requirements. The affidavit of support, which demonstrates that sponsors have sufficient income to support incoming family members, is undergoing significant revision. The income thresholds are being updated, and the enforcement mechanisms for these commitments are being strengthened. What this means practically is that if you are sponsoring a family member, you need to ensure that your household income meets the new requirements, which in many cases will be higher than the current standards. Additionally, there will be stricter monitoring of whether sponsors are actually providing the financial support they promised. This is not about preventing working-class families from sponsoring relatives. There are still provisions for using assets, co-sponsors, and household income to meet the requirements, but you need to understand exactly what will be expected of you and ensure you can meet those obligations. The fourth component is the one that has generated the most alarming headlines, and it is the one I want to address most carefully. There are provisions in this overhaul that affect what happens when family members are already in the United States in undocumented or uncertain status. For mixed-status families, where some members have legal status and others do not, there are new guidelines about how cases will be handled. I want to be very clear about something. These provisions do not authorize random separations of families going about their daily lives. What they do is establish clearer frameworks for how immigration enforcement interacts with pending family cases and how discretion will be applied in cases involving family unity considerations. This is complex territory that absolutely requires consultation with a qualified immigration attorney if it applies to your situation. But the sensational claims that millions of families will be torn apart overnight are not an accurate representation of what these policies contain. The fifth component involves changes to immigrant visa allocation and category priorities. The annual limits on how many immigrant visas are issued in various family categories are being restructured. Some categories may see increased allocations, while others may see reductions. Additionally, there are new provisions affecting how unused visas from one category can be redistributed to others. For families who have been waiting in long backlogs, this could actually be positive news if your category is prioritized. For others, it could mean extended wait times. The specific impact depends entirely on which preference category applies to your relationship and which country you are immigrating from. Now, I want to pause here and directly address the fear that is gripping so many hearts right now. The phrase "families torn apart" appears in nearly every headline about this overhaul, and I understand why media outlets use that language. It generates clicks, it generates views, it generates exactly the kind of emotional response that keeps people glued to their screens. But language matters, and when we use the most extreme possible framing for every policy change, we lose the ability to distinguish between genuine emergencies and routine adjustments. Are there families who need to pay serious attention to these changes? Absolutely. Are there situations where failing to respond appropriately could have significant consequences? Yes. But is this a wholesale assault on family immigration designed to rip parents from children and spouses from each other? That is not what the evidence shows. What we are looking at is a significant administrative restructuring that will require adaptation, preparation, and in some cases, professional legal guidance. That is serious. That deserves your attention. But it is not the apocalyptic scenario that fear-based headlines would have you believe. In the final section of this video, I am going to give you a specific action plan for protecting your family based on these changes. Let me give you a practical action plan that you can begin implementing immediately. These steps are designed to help you navigate the transition period and ensure that your family's case remains on solid ground, regardless of how the policy landscape shifts. Step 1 is to assess your current situation honestly and thoroughly. Pull out every piece of documentation related to your immigration case. Review where you are in the process. Check the dates on your approval notices, your priority dates, and any pending applications. Understand exactly which preference category applies to your family members and what the current wait times are for that category. Knowledge of your baseline situation is essential before you can evaluate how changes might affect you. If you do not have organized records of your immigration history, now is the time to create them. Request copies of any documents you have lost, build a complete file that you can reference and share with an attorney if needed. Step 2 is to strengthen your documentation before you are asked to provide it. Given that enhanced verification protocols are coming, do not wait until you receive a request for evidence to start gathering supporting documents. If you are sponsoring a spouse, collect photographs spanning your relationship, joint financial records, lease agreements or property documents showing shared residence, and affidavits from friends and family who can attest to your genuine relationship. If you are sponsoring parents or siblings, obtain certified copies of birth certificates, family registry documents, and any other official records that establish your biological relationships. The more comprehensive your documentation package, the smoother your case will proceed under the new verification standards. Step 3 is to evaluate your financial readiness for updated sponsorship requirements. Calculate your current household income and compare it to both the existing and anticipated affidavit of support thresholds. If you are close to the minimum requirement, consider whether you need to identify a joint sponsor who can supplement your income. Review your assets and determine whether you could use savings, property, or investments to meet the requirements if your income alone falls short. Do not assume that because you qualified before, you will automatically qualify under new standards. Run the numbers now so you have time to make adjustments if necessary. Step 4 is to consult with a qualified immigration attorney, especially if your situation involves any complexity whatsoever. This is not generic advice I give to everyone. This is specific guidance based on the nature of these changes. If you have family members with uncertain status, if you have ever had any immigration violations, if your case has been pending for an unusually long time, or if you have received requests for evidence that you struggled to answer, you need professional legal guidance. An experienced immigration attorney can review your specific circumstances and advise you on any vulnerabilities you need to address before March 2026. The cost of a consultation is insignificant compared to the cost of making mistakes that could derail your family's future. Step 5 is to stay informed through reliable sources. Immigration policy is constantly evolving, and the implementation of this overhaul will likely involve additional guidance, clarifications, and possibly modifications between now and March 2026. Do not rely on social media rumors or sensational news coverage for your information. Follow official USCIS announcements, reputable immigration law organizations, and channels like this one that are committed to providing accurate, balanced information. When you see alarming headlines, take a breath and look for the primary sources before allowing yourself to panic. Step 6 is to maintain your current status carefully during this transition period. Whatever your current immigration status, guard it diligently. Do not let visas expire. Do not miss deadlines for applications or renewals. Do not travel internationally without understanding the implications for your pending cases. During periods of policy transition, maintaining stable status becomes even more critical because you do not want to create additional complications while the system is already adjusting to new procedures. Stay employed if employment is required for your status. Stay enrolled if enrollment is required. Follow every rule meticulously. Now I want to speak directly to the fear that brought you to this video. I know that when you saw the title, your heart clenched. I know that the phrase "families torn apart" triggered memories of stories you have heard, images you have seen, and nightmares you have tried not to imagine becoming your reality. I know that for immigrant families, these fears are not abstract. They are rooted in real experiences, real separations, and real trauma that communities have endured for generations. But I also need you to hear this truth. You are not powerless. You are not at the mercy of forces completely beyond your control. Yes, policies change. Yes, governments make decisions that affect millions of lives. But within that reality, there is still agency. There is still preparation. There is still the ability to position yourself and your family for the best possible outcome, regardless of what external circumstances arise. The families who navigate these transitions most successfully are not the ones who ignore the changes and hope for the best. They are also not the ones who panic and make desperate decisions based on incomplete information. The families who succeed are the ones who stay informed, stay prepared, stay organized, and stay connected to qualified professionals who can guide them through complexity. Your family's story is not over. Your journey toward reunification is not ending. These policy changes represent a new chapter that requires adaptation, not a final page that closes the book. Millions of families have navigated immigration policy shifts before you, and millions more will do so after. The path may twist and turn in ways you did not anticipate, but the destination remains possible for those who persist with patience and wisdom. If this video has given you clarity that you did not have before, I want to encourage you to share it with other families in your community who are experiencing the same fears. Sometimes the greatest gift we can offer each other is simply accurate information delivered with compassion. And if you want to stay informed about immigration developments affecting your family's future, make sure you are subscribed to ClearPath USA Daily. This channel exists to serve you. Thank you for trusting me with your attention today. Thank you for being part of this community of families who support each other through uncertainty. Remember that knowledge is power, preparation is protection, and hope is not naive when it is grounded in action. Stay strong, stay informed, stay together. I will see you in the next video.